So, the final piece of the puzzle that we need to talk about here is the slave trade. Now, as we said in the last section of this video, the slave trade is a direct result of the importance and the demand globally for sugar from the Americas. Um, Now, while it's the sugar business that initially creates the demand for slaves from West Africa, once Europeans realize that West Africa is a reliable source for slave labor begins being incorporated into every industry. You can see from the legend on the graphic here tobacco, coffee, cotton, sugar, mining, and rice production all utilize slave labor. Now, by far, sugar is the dominant source or the dominant industry in which slave labor is used. The amount of slaves brought into the Caribbean is more than South America, Central America, and the Southern United States put together. 5 million slaves go to Brazil alone. And in fact, Brazil was the last country in the world to specifically outlaw slave labor. They did not do so until almost the 1900s. Now, the plantation system in the America necessitates cheap labor. In order to keep the plantations and the encomiendas profitable, labor costs must stay low for mercantilism to function the way that it needs to. Now, again, native depopulation moves Europeans' focus over to West Africa. Um, Arab states had been purchasing West African slaves for hundreds of years, going back to the Sand Road. And the Portuguese are introduced to it in the 1400s as they are exploring the west coast of Africa to try to find their way to India. Um, so once a reliable system is in place to bring slaves across the Atlantic from West Africa, um, like I said, the demand for that labor increases dramatically. By 1650, it's estimated that somewhere between 200,000 and 250,000 slaves a year are being brought from West Africa to the Caribbean and the Americas. And what this creates is a cyclical system that we now call the triangle trade. And the way that the triangle trade functions is manufactured goods are either made in Europe or purchased from China and filtered through Europe to Africa. In return for those manufactured goods, slaves and gold are purchased in Africa and transferred to the Americas. In the Americas, the slaves are offloaded and raw materials are purchased to be brought back to Europe for processing into finished goods. So essentially, it looks somewhat like this. Okay. Um, Now, by no means is it this simple and this one-sided. Um, Manufactured goods sometimes from Europe go to the Americas, and then from the Americas, raw materials are brought to Africa, and the cycle moves in reverse. But essentially, this is the basic concept of the triangle trade, right? Raw materials from the Americas, slaves from Africa, finished goods from Europe, and sometimes China. Now, of all of the trade networks and the trade goods that we've talked about in this unit, the slave trade, the triangle trade, is by far the most impactful because you are dealing with trade in human beings. So, this is not simply a good or a product that people are using to improve food or to build wealth. This has cultural impact, this has social impact, this has economic impact. This runs the gamut of all the spice themes. So we're going to take a look at each of the three continents separately and talk about both the positive and the negative impacts and effects on each place. And we're going to start with the Americas. In the Americas, this new African labor force quickly becomes the majority of population in pretty much every plantation colony. Um, in the French colony of Guadeloupe, which would later become Haiti and the Dominican Republic, the population breakdown was, at the time of their revolution, 98% African slave and only 2% French white plantation owner. So because of this massive slave population, it's necessary to reinforce the racial and the ethnic social hierarchy that began in the Spanish colonies. And what this creates is segregation by necessity. The white plantation and slave owners must segregate the population if for no other reason than their own personal physical safety. Um, Allowing the slave population to intermix with the white population would then create babies of mixed race, and then that would begin to break down the racial lines by which chattel slavery is defined, and that would create all sorts of new problems for the slave owners and the plantation owners. Now, because of the chattel nature of transatlantic slavery, this leads to widespread abuse among the slave population, uh, sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse. The legal system and the political system in the colonies is designed specifically to keep European privilege and European safety and wealth secured. Slave rebellions and sexual promiscuity between the white and black population are major concerns of the white slave and plantation owners, and laws are written in order to prevent those kinds of things from happening. And what this does in the plantation areas of the Americas is this creates essentially a semi permanent underclass with African slave labor, even after the Civil War in the United States and the Emancipation Proclamation. Um, the black former slave population still remains a legally segregated underclass. And it's only in the past 50 years that steps have been taken to at least attempt to undo that, not only judicial but also legal disadvantage that, and that African populations faced for essentially several hundred years. Um, Probably the best known example of this is the Constitution of the United States was originally written to count slaves as only 3/5 of human beings for voting purposes. Um, so I mean that's a pretty illustrative example of the semi-permanent legal and judicial underclass that the African population of the Americas was. Now, the slave trade, however, greatly enriches the culture of the colonies because you have the greatest outward diffusion of African culture pretty much in human history. There is massive syncretism of African culture and ways of life with both European and Native Americans. This leads to religions like Voodoo and Santeria, where African shamanism is mixed with Native American beliefs in the sun, the moon, the stars, and nature spirits, as well as Catholic mythology and Catholic saints. In the arts, the mixing of uh, English horn and woodwind instruments, Native American string instruments, and African drums create several innovative forms of music like reggae, jazz, the blues, rock and roll. In language, you have the forming of blended languages like Jamaican patois, as well as all of the different dialects of Spanish, which are influenced by African words. And economically, the backbone of American industry, especially in the United States, is built on the backs of slave labor. Um, Southern plantations operate through slave labor, but those southern plantations also supply northern factories. So the textile, the rum, and the tobacco industries in the United States flourish only because there is African slave labor driving that agricultural process. Now, in Africa, there's also a mixed bag of results. They are overwhelmingly negative, but there are some positives. There's massive demographic changes. The male population of West Africa dwindles, which has some unintended side effects. Polygamy begins to emerge among middle and lower classes, meaning that men are marrying multiple wives. Also, women begin to gain access to opportunities that were not previously available, both in business and in the political structure. On a positive side effect, the introduction of maize and cassava from the Americas helps to offset somewhat that population decline because these vegetables have very high calorie levels compared to the products normally grown in African agriculture. And because of the fact that they grow well in a sub Saharan climate, they become very important staple crops in both West and Southern Africa. However, the slave trade does create pretty constant warfare between African kingdoms and African tribes. And that warfare becomes more brutal with the infusion of European technology, things like guns and high quality steel. And what you begin to see in Africa is that smaller states and smaller independent societies begin to disappear as they are enveloped or consolidated into the larger, wealthier the slaver states in Africa. Also, economically, African businesses and industry also begin to decline. Because of the slave trade, this enables African merchants to import cheap goods from Europe, Asia, and the Americas. So there is very little incentive for Africans to develop their own domestic industries. And the African businesses and industries that do exist cannot compete against the higher quality goods that are coming in from foreign countries. Now, in the case of Europe, when we talk about the effects, hopefully that first bullet point is self-explanatory. Okay. The wealth generated through the triangle trade and through European monopolies based on mercantilism enriches the countries of Western Europe in a way that has rarely been seen in history. China in the early years of the Silk Road, the Islamic Caliphate with the expansion of the sand roads, the kingdoms of West Africa like Ghana and Mali, thanks to salt and gold. The amount of wealth flowing into Europe during this time period is absolutely astounding. But it's not just wealth that's growing. Europeans are growing in their political influence as well. They're able to negotiate on a more even footing with the larger, more powerful states. Their mercantile monopoly funds the expansion of their armies and their navies to protect their trade and their colonies. And by the 1700s, Europe is the most militarized continent on Earth. And the navies and armies of European countries are several hundred percent, several 100% larger than they had been only 100 years earlier. The Navy of Great Britain is the largest in the world by the middle of the 1700s, even though Great Britain is, without its colonies, only somewhere along the lines of like the 50th or 60th largest country in the world. Now, that wealth also funds some positive things as well. It funds several centuries of innovation that we're going to talk about in the next chapter. Europeans use the wealth of the Americas to build on their Renaissance foundations. And you can trace the scientific revolution, the Protestant Reformation, and the Enlightenment movement in Europe directly to the wealth that is flowing in from the Americas. And most of that is based on cheap silver, which also gives European states and merchants the ability to compete, as we said, in Asian markets and with Asian goods.